So Youlonda, you've been here your whole life.
Yep. So there's an interstate 285. If and 285 is like a highway that outlines the perimeter. So you want to be anywhere on the inner part of that highway is inside the perimeter. So that's the city of Atlanta, that's Brookhaven, Decatur, Sandy Springs, parts of Decatur, parts of East Point, and everything outside of that interstate is outside of the perimeter. So that's everything else. A lot of Gwinnett County, Henry County. So that's your Stockbridge and your Morrow, your Marietta, Powder Springs, all of that is outside of the perimeter. So inside the perimeter is really just a small piece of Georgia. But like you said, like when most people think about, even if you say, oh, I moved near Atlanta, like people just think Atlanta, but there's the perimeter. It's like the inner perimeter and the outer perimeter. And it's hard to explain until you maybe like actually see it on the map, but there is actually an interstate that goes around the perimeter, and everything on that inside of that highway is inside the perimeter. And it's going to cost you a little bit more because you're in the actual city, you're near the stadiums, you're near museums and arenas, and then everything else that's outside of the perimeter. I mean, you still have like a lot of activity and city life, but it's just further from the actual city.
So when moving to for the ladies who have relocated here from other places, why did you opt out of moving into, and all positive, obviously, because I heard something about schools, but instead of moving inside of the perimeter where all the action is, right? Why did you go outside?
Well, for me, I have a few items that I kind of was looking at when I was thinking about moving back to Georgia. Definitely budget was one of my biggest concerns. Property taxes, home prices, how much I'm willing to spend monthly on mortgage, rent, these types of things. So definitely budget was a big factor for me. Also safety for me is huge. So when I chose initially, when I moved back, when I chose Gwinnett County, safety was a big concern for me. So I wanted to be somewhere where as well as schools, I wanted to see somewhere where my daughter would be safe, kind of a little bit of slower pace, more of a, what am I trying to say? The kind of the suburbs of Atlanta. So that was big for me, still being close enough where I could get away and we could travel into the city. But those were like three. I have 7 here, but of course, my proximity to my work, I work in Beaufort, so I wanted to be close to. I do not like commutes at all. I prefer to work either from home or having about a 10-minute commute is probably the most for me. I value that drastically for me to not having a long commute. Amenities, outdoor activities is big for me. So kind of living in, where there's a lot of parks, a lot of recs. I like being where I can get out and walk, having a park close to me all the time. I enjoy that. Also, future development was big for me. And you can get this information from like your city hall, like a growing, of course, when you buy a home, you want it to go up in value within 5-10 years, or sooner if possible, but you kind of want to know the neighborhood and how it's growing and how your investment will you'll have a good ROI on your investment. You don't want to buy a home and it's just kind of just a dead neighborhood and not growing. Right. So those were big factors for me.
Okay.
Which is why you need a good realtor.
Yes. Yeah, and those realtors, they know all of it, so they can kind of, if these are your concerns, they can definitely address those concerns for you.
So I'll say, coming from New Jersey, I traveled to Atlanta a lot when I was in college. So when I thought that I would move to Atlanta, if I ever were to move to Atlanta, I was like, I need to be in Buckhead. I need to be where all the action is. I need to be where it's lively. And then, I became a married woman with children, and my priority wasn't so much where are the local hotspots
Hotspots.
as opposed to where is the PTA and the parks, right? So it was not an easy decision to relocate to Georgia, but it was something that was necessary, because I didn't really see why. I was holding on to staying, where I was. So when I came to Georgia, or before I moved to Georgia, I'll say, I was looking for a place that had tons to do for my kids, right? So that was my priority. Schools, obviously, number one, activities for the kids. So parks, recreation, a sense of community, being in a neighborhood that had tons of children, right? So I can't really determine that because I can't survey the neighborhood to see how many kids are living there. But I looked at the school districts and I saw what neighborhoods were feeding into what schools. So I was very strategic about finding a school. So Atlanta to me wasn't a priority anymore, because I wanted family. Then I had to think about my husband and I. Okay, so we're still pretty young. Is it going to be a place that has restaurants? Can I go shopping? Like, how far is the mall? I need to be able to go to the mall. New Jersey has some of the largest malls. So I need to be at the mall. Hello?
Did we lose her?
Uh-oh. I think so. She's still in.
Was she able to make anybody a co-host?
I don't think
Nikisha.
so. Yikes.
She'll be right back on.
A little technical difficulty.
I know, just
Yeah.
Just,
bear with us. We need a little sign.
yeah, technical difficulties.
Technical difficulties. And some elevator music.
Mm-hmm. While you wait. But yeah, so the whole location thing, like she was saying, we were kind of in that same space, when you have children and
Hi
they're
guys,
school
I
age.
can hear you, but I can't see anything. How crazy is that?
When they're school age, your focus is more around them
Let's
and
see.
their daily activities.
Right,
So
right.
if you're trying to figure out your commute to work versus their activities, getting them from school or getting them to sports or other outside activities, that's typically one of the major or few of the major options that you'll consider before deciding on an area to live in.
Yeah. You definitely want to be close to everything. My daughter did cheer for 4 years in for Mill Creek, and I needed to be literally, it was an everyday, it was just routine. Like we pick her up from school straight to the park, and you want to be close to everything.
Yeah.
You do. My son did football, and it was the same.
Hello?
It was
you know how it is. It's draining. It's every day, so you want to be if you can next door.
Gotta mute your phone.
I'm leaving off for one of those. All right, so it says my internet is not stable. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Okay, awesome. I'm gonna keep my camera off because maybe that was one of the reasons. I don't know at what point it just stopped because I just saw you guys smiling and I was like, okay, well, maybe they agree with what I'm saying. And that was that.
We agree.
All right, well, I don't want to go too much into my story. I think Nikisha, you were saying something about school systems also, school districts.
Yeah, I was just kind of co-signing with my version of the elevator music while we were waiting for you to come back. So I was just kind of co-signing what you were saying about when your husband, decided you were relocating and some of the things we're looking for as it related to the dynamic of your family children, their activities, things for them to do and enjoy, as well as for you guys, if you wanted to have date night, making sure that you wouldn't be too far from them, but you guys still would have, an opportunity, places to go, some options to go and have a good time.
That sounds about right.
Mm-hmm.
Good job, team. Can you see my screen?
No, ma'am.
Okay, let me go ahead and share that. So you're 100% correct. So some of the things that I was thinking that we would be missing if we didn't live closer to Atlanta, we actually still had options in where we are. And that's pretty much what the point that I was trying to drive home. There's tons of restaurants and there's shopping here. There's outdoor events that are just for adults. And we'll go into a little bit more of that, but I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything that I thought that I may. If you need a family friendly neighborhood, you're gonna miss out on adult activities. I don't have that sense at all.
No.
Can you see the screen now?
Yes.
Okay. So navigating Georgia's neighborhoods and communities. So when you decide that you want to relocate to a whole new state, and I know that people know, I feel like everybody knows somebody that lives in Georgia. So they may have one perspective of just that place that they go to visit family, but they may not understand the true landscape of the entire state. And what you need to understand is what fits well for my family is not going to fit well for yours, and vice versa. So financing options, how much is going to cost to live in that area that you think is the area that you need to be in. Right now, I probably can't afford Buckhead. It's very different from the Buckhead that I used to visit in, almost 15, 16 years ago. Transportation. Gwinnett County does not have, based on what I see, a vast transportation hub. We're not a vast transportation hub. You're not going to find a bunch of buses. You need to drive if you live here. So that's a big thing. If you're not driving, you don't have a car, this may not be the place for you unless you work from home or you work very close to home. Community involvement, if that's important to you, then you want to look at neighborhoods and you can look on these neighborhood websites and see the type of communities that they have. And based off of what I've seen just in Gwinnett County over the last year, there is a ton of community involvement, right? So Nikisha, if you want to jump in really quick, we want to talk about from the realtor perspective. Again, this webinar wasn't about selling you on Georgia. It's about making that transition a little bit easier. If somebody's interested in moving to Georgia, knowing what questions to ask, knowing what areas to look into, and knowing that you have a resource within us. We offer a plethora of advice and expertise that can guide you along this way. And we want to be that resource to you or to someone that you know that's interested in moving here. So we wanted to talk a little bit about if you're going to move here, what options you have, whether that's going to be buying a home, renting a home, or renting an apartment. Nikisha, you want to jump in here?
Yep. So there are options. A lot of times I found with clients, they don't want to always unless they have visited enough or they have family here or they've been here enough to kind of know some of the ins and outs of the areas, and they've already kind of made up their mind because they've spent enough time to know where they want to live. In most instances, there are people that know they want to be in the state, and they may even know specific cities per se, but in close proximity to other cities. And so in those instances, they will say, I probably would rather rent first than buy, because renting for at least a year will give me some time in a specific location, specific city. I can venture out, see what's close proximity to me, and then even on the weekends, kind of go out even further and try some other things to kind of see and get a good feel for it. At that point, after a year, I should be ready to buy. And at that point, I should have a better understanding or clear understanding of where I want to live. So for that, when I